Hello and welcome to Perspectives, where we'll take a deep dive into the issues of the day and where we'll take a look at people's opinions on such issues. I am Ruth Osime. Welcome back to Perspectives on Arise News. As the world marks Autism Awareness Month this April, we are diving into a subject that is as emotional as it is important. Autism spectrum disorder, a developmental condition that affects how a person communicates, interacts, and experiences the world around them. But beyond the clinical definitions, autism tells a deeper story, one that unfolds in the homes and hearts of thousands of families across the world. In a society like ours, where autism is still widely misunderstood, the emotional toll on parents, siblings, and caregivers can be overwhelming. And yet, through all the tears, therapy sessions, and societal stares, there are moments of incredible joy, of resilience, of children who, while different, are not broken. Children who are deeply gifted, who paint, circulate, calculate, remember, and inspire. Children like 15-year-old Kanye Yachukwu Tagbo Okeke, the Nigerian boy living with autism who just made history by entering the Guinness World Records for the largest paintings on canvas by an individual. His work is titled Impossibility is a Myth. And for many families living with autism, that phrase isn't just a title, it's a lifeline, a reminder that the child can thrive. So today we are shining the light on the emotional journey of raising a child with autism in Nigeria, the challenges, the breakthroughs, the societal prejudice, and the private victories. We'll talk to advocates and we would hear their truths, and together we'll explore what it means to not just survive, but live, love, and lead with hope. We're heading for a short break, but stay with us because I'll be right back in a moment to introduce our guest on the show. Matlou Tsoletsi, a philanthropist, MD of Ellen Grace Consulting and CEO of Cupcake Marketing. Perspectives will return in just a moment. Welcome back to Perspectives on Arise News. Let me take a minute to properly introduce our very distinguished guests. Matlou Tsoletsi is the Managing Director of Ellen Grace Consulting and CEO of Cupcake Marketing. Matlou serves on the board of the Zeebah Foundation, which is why we have her here today. It is an autism resource center supporting inclusive care for children and families. She also leads sponsorships at Afrima and represents the Bear Group in West Africa. Great to have you, Matlou, here on Perspectives.
Good morning, Ruth.
Okay. So
great to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, good to see you. So I know that you run an NGO for autism. Can you tell us what role your NGO plays and what impact it's making in the lives of children with autism for now?
Okay. So of all the work that you've mentioned that I do, I think my most important work is the work that I do with the Zeebah Foundation. And I serve on the board as a member of the Board of Trustees for the Zeebah Foundation, which is based in Abuja. The Zeebah Foundation runs a resource center for children who are on the autism spectrum, and we help them with resources, and we also help their families and caregivers.
Okay, but society is slowly becoming more aware of this neurodiversity. And how does your NGO help drive that shift? And can you share any story that you've experienced that our viewers would like to listen to, of your experience with autistic children?
So the services that our resource center offers is we offer therapeutic services that help children. So we're very passionate about helping children who are on the autism spectrum to get into mainstream schooling. So we use therapy to help the children. We've got different forms of therapy spanning from music therapy, swimming therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy. And these are all resources that help children who are on the autism spectrum to basically align to living life in what we call normal society. So we prepare them for mainstream schooling. Personally, about children who are on the autism spectrum, and my experience is that I've always believed that, as misunderstood as autism is, that children who are the autism spectrum are actually specially gifted children. We'll take the example of Kanye Chuku, for example, who has just achieved a major feat, right, by painting on the world's largest art canvas. It takes a lot for a child to have that kind of energy, to have that kind of intellect and intelligence. It takes a lot for a child to work out in their heads what they want to paint on this canvas. The canvas itself is so huge that it doesn't fit in any normal venue, right? Something that would have taken someone a year to paint, he managed to paint it in 4 months. So I've always believed that children who are on the spectrum are super gifted. However, we live in a world that has got its standards in terms of the societies that we live in terms of the communities that we live in, and hence we help the children to, I'm careful not to say live up to society standards, but to align and to fit in.
When we were chatting on the phone a couple of days ago, you did speak about shadowing. What does that mean? What role do they play, and how are they trained to deal with autistic children?
So we work with a group of specialists. I'm not an autism specialist myself. I just happen to sit on the board of the Zeebah Foundation. So we work with very clinical people who are trained to deal with children who are on the spectrum. So when our children or the children of the Zeebah place, for example, get into mainstream schooling, what we first do is that we have quite an in-depth analysis of, are they ready from a communications perspective, a social perspective, etc. Are they ready to get into mainstream schooling? And based on the analysis, they then go into the schools, and then you have a trained therapist that then accompanies them to school to make sure that they are aligned and to make sure that they're comfortable. Because as you may know, the school environment can be one of the most testing and one of the most difficult environments, because children, I'd say by nature, they tease, they mock, they bully. So for a child who's just come out of a very protected environment to go into an environment where there are many other children who do not understand what the child is going through, shadowing becomes important.
I also, one also does wonder that when these children get to the formative years, if you can give us examples, I don't know whether you've had first-hand experience with children in your NGOs. If you can give us examples of how do they adapt to new environments, how are they managed when they lose their control of themselves or when they have emotional outbursts? What are the people who take care of them taught, how are they taught to manage them better?
I think more than managing, really, it's more a matter of how do you use the therapy to help a child regulate themselves, right? So one of the therapies that we use in our foundation is called ABA, which is Applied Behavioral Analysis, which helps children bring out more of their good characteristics, and it helps them kind of get rid or lessen what may not be good characteristics. So through that therapy, it helps to develop good character. And then you've got other therapies like occupational therapy, which basically helps the children to be able to take care of themselves on a daily basis like everyone else does. We all have emotions. We all go through bad days, you know, but we try as much as possible to help the children through the different therapy methods.
So, but how did somebody like Kanye Kachuku now, for instance, how did you discover, how was his talent discovered? How was it now also maximized to make him create the feat that he did?
So you ask a very interesting question, because in all the work that we do, what's always most important is parenting, right? And with Kanye's case, we can't take the credit for the discovery of his talent, but rather his parents have played a critical role in terms of discovering Kanye's talent. I've spent a lot of time with them over the last 6-7 months, so I think I can tell the story on their behalf, where they say that firstly, Kanye's grandmother said there's a problem because Kanye is a non-verbal autistic child, that Kanye at 5 years old does not speak, cannot express himself. They then notice that he's very keen on painting, like he'll always find a brush or a pen and start painting. But what they did is then they harnessed the talent. They got Kanye a special teacher, art teacher, that focused on him and brought out what we now see today in Kanye Kachuku. So while we may offer interventions, the parenting is also critical, because when a child is on the spectrum, I think you have to be curious as a parent that then what is their gift, what is their purpose, and then help to harness that and bring that out in the child.
I also wonder, does your NGO also work with parents hand in hand when it comes to their mental health? Because obviously being a parent of an autistic child must be a harrowing journey to begin with until you get accustomed to the situation that you find yourself in. So as an NGO that specializes in bringing out the best of these children, what kind of relationship and what kind of exercises do you also have with the parents to better prepare them for their role as parents of autistic children?
So when we started the Zeebah Foundation in 2019, our chairman, Mr. Nzen Ogbe, was always clear that we have to have a single-minded proposition or focus, right? Which I've already mentioned, getting the children ready for mainstream schooling and giving them help with resources for people on the spectrum. So we focus purely on that. Zen has always said that once we get this right, then we can look at other services. So right now, our services don't go beyond focusing on the children, bringing out the best that you possibly can out of the children. So right now, we don't have services that specifically cater to mental health for the caretakers of the children. Which is a very interesting point that you raised. We were at an event last night, and a lady who's in a medical profession did get up and say that while we celebrate Kanye's feat, while we acknowledge what he's done and what he's achieved, it's also important to check in with the parents in terms of how are they coping as parents of a child who's on the spectrum. So possibly something that we could look at in the future once we are comfortable with our children. We have a lot on our plate. We get a lot of requests for space for children in our foundation. Currently, we've got just under 50 children in our resource center that we're taking care of. We are also looking at expanding our resource center and building a new center that can take in more children beyond the borders of Abuja, because we get requests beyond the borders of Abuja. So we are looking at catering for more children. There are more and more families that have children who are on the spectrum. Most of them may not understand what is going on with their children. Most of them do know the diagnosis and have the diagnosis, but don't want to come to the reality that that the children are on the spectrum. So part of our big work also is, and I guess this kind of segues into helping parents who have children who are on the spectrum, is that it's okay that your child is on the spectrum. There should not be a stigma about it. Your child is just, you know, special in that regard. So we want to work with parents to say, we are here to offer you the help. We are here to offer your children the help. And we're just here to help. And it's okay. We talk about autism all the time. Chairman himself has got a son who's on the spectrum, and he's a big advocate for autism. And he speaks quite liberally to people about autism and encourages parents to say, go and get a diagnosis. Early intervention helps. And I suppose all of these steps that I'm mentioning help to take away the anxiety of what could be the problem with my child. And also, once you know what the problem is, removing the stigma from it to say, you're not the only parent. There are many more parents who are faced with children who live on the autism spectrum, and we're here to help.
Mention this because, you know, one cannot but wonder, you know, when parents decide to take their children to mainstream schools and hopefully help them know how to adapt with society and what have you. And in most cases, in such cases, do you really think it works out better for the child? Or do you think they're better off being in private special needs schools, where the teachers are more focused on issues like this and can handle the children better?
Ruth, I'm not sure I got you properly. Your line was breaking,
okay,
but are you
sorry.
saying, is it better for children to be in a special needs school?
I'm saying that sometimes parents choose to send their children to normal schools and not special needs schools. But I'm also asking the question that, is it better for them to go to special needs schools where they deal with teachers that better understand their situation, or is it more advantageous or more effective if they learn how to mix with other people in society? What school would bring the best out of the child, would bring the best out of the child on the long term? Special needs or mainstream?
So I'm not qualified to answer that question, but I'm always a big advocate of specialized schools for different needs of children. Even the children that are deemed normal, there are some of them that should not be in mainstream schooling. And that's a different conversation altogether, so I don't want to get myself into trouble. But I'm a big advocate for special needs schools. However, when you look at Africa, and when you look at Nigeria as a country, how many special needs schools for children who are on the spectrum are there? I know there's quite a lot that are coming up at the moment. What are the options really? You know, so I think children need to be in places in schools where their talents are harnessed, where they're safe, most importantly, and where they are understood. So,
okay, sorry, I didn't know that.
You know, and I keep saying that we run a resource center, so we don't run a school. So I also have to differentiate between the two. We don't run a school, we run a resource center that helps with autism resources.
Okay.
So, yeah. So that's my answer to that. I'm not sure if you can understand me. I don't want to get myself
I can understand
into
you,
trouble.
but you know, you also understand that unfortunately, we were supposed to have somebody that would answer these questions better on your behalf as a mother, but unfortunately, circumstances beyond our control left you as our only guest. And you're not doing too badly, don't worry, Matlou. We're not doing too badly. We're making the
I'm
best
still
of the
shaken
situation.
from that experience before the interview.
I know. She must have been nervous or something. I don't know what could have happened, but we'll find out after the show. So we're going for a break right now. And Matlou, don't go anywhere because we're still going to ask you a few more questions. So we'll be right back on Perspective. See you soon. Is Matlou there?
I can hear you, Ruth.
Okay, I thought I lost you for a minute.
I'm here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
You know, there was another thing that crossed my mind. You know, for when we talk about autistic children, we only kind of focus on the parents and what the parents have to go through and how they've had to adjust, blah, 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 and the mental anguish and emotional torture that the family get involved in. But we don't focus on the siblings as much. Because I know that most parents who have most autistic children who have siblings, parents sometimes force them to take their autistic sibling out to them to functions or spend more time with them. Do you think that somehow or the other, after a certain point, at a given time, these siblings will almost resent the fact that their attention is being taken away from them because of their sibling? Form of jealousy rearing its head?
I think firstly it's firstly human nature, but also from an experience that I had visiting Kanye's family. Kanye's got a younger brother, Michaela. So the family has got 4 children, Kanye being the third, and then Michaela being the last. So because we're working around this with Kanye, I walked into the house and I was like, hello, Kanye. The mother calls him Nkanka. I'm like, hello, Nkanka, how are you? And I give him a hug. And the brother turns around and says, everything is about Kanye. What about me? How come you haven't given me a hug? And the mom and I had a conversation about it, that, you know, we need to be cautious of giving the one child so much attention that the youngest is feeling like they're not getting the right amount of attention. So I think it would be natural, or I guess normal, for one child to feel left out because the attention is so much on this child that needs all the help that they possibly can get, that needs all the support that they possibly could get. Because then as the child who doesn't need as much support, you can expect it to get on with it. Just keep it moving.
Now that you mentioned...
So
okay, sorry.
I think...
no, go ahead,
no,
sorry.
Continue.
Should I go ahead or are you done?
I was going to say, earlier on you mentioned mental health check for the parents. And I guess the mental health check has got to be all round, not just for the parents, but for everyone that is helping and supporting a child who's on the autism spectrum.
You know, it's interesting that you said that about Kanye's younger brother. I'm also wondering that at some point, I'm sure the younger brother would have had to grow older than his years because he would now become protective of his sibling, and thereby, even when he comes to school or for events or wherever, find himself defending his autistic sibling. I'm just wondering whether it's also something that you might have experienced when you came across, in your time that you've come across siblings of autistic children, whether you've seen them being quite defensive or being overly protective of their autistic sibling. Is this something that you have noticed?
Yeah, absolutely. And I keep referring to Kanye, one, because he is part of our family at the Zeebah Foundation, but also I've spent so much time with them. We went for an event at dinner last night. And every time he went to the bathroom, he went with his older brother, whom you could see that he's walking around as an older brother, but also as a protector and a defender of Kanye. At some point, the person, my friend who I was with, wanted to take a picture with Kanye. And I had to ask the older brother, is it okay? Can we take a picture with your brother? And also consult with Kanye, is it okay that we take a picture with you? So I definitely did feel that the older brother is overprotective of him.
Okay, that's interesting. But when it comes to emotional outbursts, I'm sorry that I have to keep asking you all these questions because you are the closest to the candidates we can use now because of unfortunate circumstances that happened this morning with the mother of Kanye. Now, when it comes to emotional outbursts and stuff like that, have you ever experienced seen any autistic child, lose their temper or lose their composure? And what usually calms them down? What are the things that needs to be done to make the environment calmer and make them more at peace or less stressed?
I think it's called the spectrum because no one child on the spectrum is like the other. So the sensitivities differ. So overstimulation of noise could be more annoying to one child. Touching could be more annoying to the other child. So there have been outbursts, and usually what calms autistic children down is firstly their parents, people who understand them, people who understand what it takes, what is the overstimulation, where is the irritation coming from. And those are the people that can help them calm down. So we have an interesting story. We went for an event with Kanye, and I always thought that too much noise and too much attention on him could be irritating. And it was the opposite. He was enjoying himself. He was enjoying the attention. And the mother was like, look, we have to leave. But he was like, in not saying anything because he's nonverbal, that he doesn't want to leave, but it had to take his dad to say, we have to leave. So it also comes down again to the parents understanding their children and also understanding how to, so in that case, Kanye was overstimulated and excited by the crowd and by the attention, but it had to take the dad speaking in a certain way to say, we have to call it an evening.
It's interesting that you mentioned this, Matlou, because I remembered when I was talking to the mother a couple of days ago, I asked about whether he had started to recognize the opposite sex. And she was like, oh, when he was painting, there were so many girls and it was all giggly and all shy and coy and what have you. Which brings me to my next question, that because of the situation, because they are autistic, is it wise or unwise to, because they will get older, they will grow into adulthood, they will begin to recognize the opposite sex. Some would not. So in such a situation, do you shield them away from this, or do you find a way to send the message across to them and create societal boundaries? Show them how not to overstep their boundaries, show them how to conduct themselves with the opposite sex. How do you teach them to manage their emotions? Do you think this is something that you can give us an idea about?
This came up in our conversation on the phone, you and I, Ruth, which led me to calling a mother of a 20-year-old Nigerian autistic young adult who works in the space and is a doctor. And I had the conversation with her that how are you handling your daughter's transition into real life matters beyond education, navigating the space of dating. And she says, basically, I just had to inculcate it in her head that love happens, you meet somebody, feel safe, but these are the things that you don't do. And she says that I had to repeat it over and over and over and over again until her daughter would actually tell her nanny that you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. So I guess it's about making them aware of the stage that they're that they're at in life, and how to navigate that, really.
That can't be an easy navigation, because remember I was telling you on the phone about some couple whose daughter just discovered masturbation. I don't know how it was discovered, and sometimes she will come to the living room and masturbate in front of the guests. So I am in two minds as to whether they should be exposed to sexuality. But at the same time, I also know that physically it's not something that can be avoided. So like you rightfully said, maybe it's just another step that parents of autistic children need to cross as and when the need arises. But I'm also now going to ask you about your NGO. A lot of people have NGOs, but yours cannot be cheap to run. How do you provide funds for this? How do you attract investors or donors to your NGO?
So I'm a big advocate for us attracting sponsors, and we don't have investors necessarily. We are a self-funded NGO. We are a CSI project of the Living Group Holding, which Nzen Ogbe, chairman, is the CEO of. And they've really helped us to stay buoyant. We also have what we call the Friends of Zeebah. And this is a group of very generous men and women who, on an annual basis, will give us donations. We are in the process of running a huge fundraising initiative. And largely, this is why we got into the relationship with the Tagbo Kekes, Kanye's parents, to help create awareness around autism, firstly, and also to help raise funds, because we are in the process of a project where we want to build our own resource center. So we are self-funded.
Okay, you're self-funded. So,
which is not easy.
No, it can't be easy.
So we are looking for donations. We're looking for partners. We're looking for corporate sponsorship. We're looking for public sponsorship, funding, etc.
Okay, I want to go back again to this issue, this autism situation that exists. You know, I've always wondered, I know that a lot of parents, they go the extra mile to ensure that they give the child the best possible care, you know. But I wonder whether you've spoken to some parents, and whether these parents, what their long-term plans for their children are, whether they worry about who will take care of these kids when they're gone, and whether provisions are being made to provide and give them the best possible care in their absence, because the parents are the primary carers. So what are usually the plans for parents of autistic children when it comes to long term? Do they leave it for the siblings to take care of, or do they provide care that will take care of the child even whether or not the siblings play a role? It's something I've always wondered, what long-term plans parents have for their children.
I'm going to refer to the Okekes again, because of all the interactions I've had with them. Sylvia, Dr. Okeke, she always says that she supports Kanye's art and Kanye's work because this is his livelihood. This is his career. So she puts everything into it because she knows that her son is not going to be an academic or go to university. This is what he does for a living, and therefore she's putting everything in it. So I guess to answer your question in a long, kind of winded way, is to say that I believe that parents do make provision. It's a parent thing to do also to make provision for your children. I mean, even your children that are deemed okay or normal, you do kind of make some kind of provision for them. So I would assume that a whole lot more focus or energy is put into children who are on the autism spectrum to make sure that they also have a brighter future, a good future. You know, we keep saying that no child should be left behind. You know, we keep saying that we want an inclusive society, we want an inclusive community. And that's why I love the work that we do at the Zeebah Foundation, because it guarantees that, right? That all children are brought along, and it also guarantees that they then have a better future. And I'm sure as parents, extra care and extra thought is put into the children's futures.
Well, it's good that you say that, because like you said, all children, all autistic children have their different spectrums, and there's some of them who are more independent than others. Do you also think that the issue of assisted living, because I know abroad, some people who have autistic children, their children live alone, but they have people living with them. So do you think the idea of assisted living would also work in Nigeria for young autistic adults who want to be live independently from their parents?
No, Ruth, you're asking me about, living in Nigeria, okay, and no, I'm not Nigerian.
Not even, anywhere in any part of the world. If an autistic adult, for instance, now who's maybe 39 or 29 or 30 wants to live alone, I know abroad some of them live in assisted accommodations. In other words, somebody lives with them that takes care of them or caters to their needs. Do you think that will work anywhere else? Do you think it's a good idea?
So I think it's always a great idea for young people to live alone for developmental purposes, for growth purposes. However, it also depends on the city or the country where they live in terms of safety, in terms of access. So I think once a child has been given all the training, once a child has been taught every kind of good behavioral patterns, and they've been properly analyzed for adulting, I think they should live alone. Autistic people are people just like us. They're just different. So once we've worked on that difference and made sure that they're okay to, and I use this word very carefully, assimilate into real life, then they should be given the independence that all of us at some point desire, or all of us at some point desired, and were able to achieve. I think they should be given that space.
Okay. I know, let's go back. I want to go back to that issue of shadows that follow children to school. Has that been very effective? When children go to school with shadows?
I think it is very effective.
So what kind of training do these shadows have to learn before they can now begin to follow the children to school?
Ruth, if a child has had a shadow for more than a year or for more than 2 years, and the parents believe in that, then I assume that it is working. And I assume that it also gives parents a lot of peace of mind, knowing that their children are being properly taken care of throughout the day. Most of our shadows are picked up from the center by the parents themselves. Kanye, for example, has had a shadow for like 4 years, maybe 5 years. I stand under correction, but it's been a number of years. And the only time that he stopped having a shadow was when he was painting, because he was full-time with his parents, either his mom or his dad. So I take it from that example alone that the parents were happy with or are happy with the service, and that's why they used it on a continual basis.
But the shadow has to go through a special training.
And
they have to go through a special training to be able to do that job.
Of course.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not a job that just anybody can do. When you are dealing with autism children also, you have to You have to have the patience, you have to have the personality, and you have to undergo relevant training to ensure that you understand. You asked a question earlier on about, when children are overstimulated, what calms them down. So shadows also need to understand they're part of the solution, right? They become part of the family. So they also understand that this is the reason why they're reacting this way. And they are part of helping the child to calm down. So definitely undergo training.
Do you also believe that parents of autistic children have to go through some form of mental health, I don't want to use the words, counseling, have to go through some form of counseling to better understand their situation? Or is it a trial day-by-day situation and you just learn as you go?
I do believe that parents of children on the spectrum do need consistent check-in with therapists, because I can imagine that it is an extremely exhausting responsibility. They do need check-in from time to time. I've sat with parents of autistic children who say, I can't believe my child is 18 and they can't do the things that I did when I was 18. You asked about them living independently. Most of us move out as we go to university. We don't return back to our homes. We go and we start our lives alone. It must affect a parent that I can't freely let my child go, or that my child can't even do this at 18. So I do believe, I believe in therapy for all of us, but with the extra responsibility of taking care of an autistic child, consistent therapy helps.
There's a pertinent...
And also therapy with a well-trained...
Go ahead.
With a well-trained therapist who understands autism and who understands what the impacts and the effects of autism are on a family.
I was also going to ask you, because I know that with parents who have a special needs child, sometimes it can affect the relationship between husband and wife. But I find that oftentimes the men switch out. They kind of almost live in denial and don't want to kind of accept the truth. And so usually the burden is on the mother. So from the parents that you've spoken to in your NGO, have you found situations like that where one parent, maybe not necessarily just the father, maybe one parent is burdened with the responsibility as opposed to sharing it between both man and wife?
I know of 2 cases I'm close to of parents who have got autistic sons. One being our chairman, Zen Ogbe. His son is autistic, and he's a very involved dad. He's a very involved father who literally blow by blow knows what his son is doing. He is, as I said earlier on, a huge advocate of autism. I've never for 1 second felt that he's checked out because of that. I think if anything, it drives him to be a better dad. It drives him to understand more about his child. And I can say the same thing for Tagbo Keke, Kanye's dad. They do sports activities together. They take walks. They play basketball. He is as involved in Kanye's life as Sylvia, the mother, is involved. So I think it's a personality thing. If you're going to be a good dad, you'll be a good dad regardless of the child that God has given you. And maybe for the 2 gentlemen that I just mentioned now, the fact that they have got autistic children gives them a higher drive to be even better parents, more involved parents, and look out for their children's well-being. So I think, if anything, it probably brings people together because they've got a common purpose of someone that they love, someone whose welfare they're concerned about, someone who they want to see thriving in life. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's just my observation from the parents that I've had to engage with in the period that I've been with the foundation.
Thank you so much, Matlou. Thank you for putting you in a spot that you've had to answer the question of 3 guests. Thank you so much for also what you've at least exposed from what you know of autism. And I agree with you that both parents should collectively put their efforts together. And this is just for those listening out there to show that you'll get a more positive result than anything if you put your heads together. So thank you so much, Matlou, Tsoletsi, for being with us this morning. God bless you. Now, today we've heard stories marked by challenges, but also resilience. Moments of uncertainty, but also powerful insight. And above all, stories grounded in love. To every parent, sibling, teacher, and caregiver on this journey, you're valued and you're not alone. And to every child on the spectrum, you are not broken. You are wonderfully unique. And as I keep saying, remember that life is a learning curve. That's all we have time for today. You've been watching Perspectives here on Arise News. With me, Ruth Osime. May God's special grace, by God's special grace, I should be here same time next week for another insightful episode of Perspectives. Until then, stay blessed and have a great week. Goodbye.